Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the EnergyLab Climate Solutions Accelerator Showcase event. My name's Adam, I'm the Program Manager, and I'm really excited to be able to give you the opportunity to hear from the 6 founders who've taken part in this year's cohort. So as we kick off, I'd like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which we meet today. I'm on the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and any Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be joining the call today. So this is the 8th iteration of the acceleration program, and this year, for the first time, we put together a program for all climate impact startups. So we've got a wonderful mix of founders that you're going to hear from today, from alternative protein, carbon sequestration, impact finance, and of course also energy. So the program is designed for startups across a range of stages. So you'll hear today from startups that were founded less than a year ago, and some startups that were around for a little bit longer, have already raised investment rounds and have grown their teams to 10 or more. And I think what this highlights is the value and the breadth of those of you in our network, our mentors, our partners and investors who can support these startups at a range of stages. So as I said, we're able to rely on a huge pool of network of mentors, partners and investors. We've got over 300 in that network. And together, I know a lot of you are watching this today, and together you're able to support those startups. So we're really, really grateful for your support, and thank you for that. We literally couldn't do it without you. So it's now 10,244 days until 2050. But don't let climate change get you down, because fear not, the founders you're going to meet today and thousands of others like them around the world are building the companies and creating the products that are going to essentially help us get us to our target for 2050 and also become the big names of tomorrow. So the 6 founders you're going to hear from today are Sky from Circle Harvest, we've got Camille from Bloom Impact Investing, Cameron from Infravision, Ian from Carbon Asset Solutions, Ben from Hygrid Energy, and last but not least, we'll hear from Jane from Harvest Thermal. So before we get stuck in, I'm now going to hand over to our CEO, Megan Fisher, who's going to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Adam. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good to see you. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, and welcome. It's so exciting to be kicking off with today. So from the very beginning, EnergyLab has been about climate impact, with a mission to support clean tech founders to break through the challenges faced by startups in scaling their technology, and in turn, help contribute to the world achieving net zero. Over 120 startups have graduated from our program so far, and our incredible list of alumni have mostly focused on energy efficiency, enabling renewable energy, and the electrification of transport. With the decarbonisation, innovation, technology, and investment landscape evolving, we are now seeing startups across a much broader spectrum that are contributing to the world of achieving net zero. So this is the first year of our Climate Solutions Accelerator, with a focus on founders of climate tech startups. So if you're not familiar with the term, climate tech deals with addressing climate change and is defined as any new business model and technology that mitigates the impacts and drivers of global greenhouse gas emissions. Climate tech includes renewables, electrification of transport, and newer technologies around carbon sequestration and low emissions agriculture and food production. BCG has recently suggested that to reach net zero, less than 2/3 of global emission reductions can be achieved with existing technologies, whereas the remainder will need to come from new innovations, requiring at least $3 trillion of investment annually over the next 30 years. $3 trillion annually over the next 30 years. It's astounding. So there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done with innovation, technology and investment in Australia and around the globe, which brings with it lots of opportunity for founders of climate tech startups in Australia. The 6 climate tech focused startups that you will hear from today have solutions that are moving us closer to net zero. I hope that you are as excited by what they have been achieving as we are. Before I hand back to Adam, I would like very much to thank the partners that have supported EnergyLab and the climate tech startup ecosystem in Australia during 2021. So a really big thank you to Transgrid, Endeavour Energy, the University of Technology Sydney, Climate Kick Australia, GHD, KPMG, FCW Lawyers, and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. And a huge, huge thank you to our amazing network of mentors, alumni, and investors who give their time and experience to our startup cohorts each year. And of course, a massive, massive thank you to Adam, our amazing program manager, for running a truly beneficial and supportive program for the startups. Back to you, Adam.
Thank you, Megan. Cool. So into the details. So we're going to start here on the main stage. We'll bring each founder up one by one for a quick interview, and that will give you essentially a snapshot of their startup and the climate impact of their solution. We're then going to, after we've heard from all 6 founders, we're going to break up into 3 simultaneous breakout sessions. They'll be facilitated by Kate, Riley, and Megan from the EnergyLab team. And here we'll dive a little bit deeper into those startups and put further questions to them. So this is your opportunity. If you have any questions and you want to hear a little bit more detail about any of the startups, and jump into those sessions afterwards. We'll get moving to those about 11:40 AEDT, about half an hour's time, and you can hear a little bit more from them. So to start off with, we're going to hear from 2 consumer-facing startups. So a lot of you have joined today are going to be working to help companies, large companies to reach net zero. But of course, there's things that we can do on a personal level to reduce our personal impact. 2 of those ways are what we eat and also where we invest our personal savings. And those 2 things are probably 2 of the more straightforward and incremental changes that we can make to reduce our personal impact. So we're going to start off with Sky, who's going to talk about what we eat. So I'm pleased to bring Sky up onto the stage now. Hi, Sky.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Good to see you. So could we start off, could you give us a quick overview of Circle Harvest? What's all the buzz about?
Well, there is a lot of buzz going on around here. So we actually take fruit and vegetable waste that would normally go to landfill and use that for feed for our mini livestock. And if you haven't guessed yet, it's actually insects that we use. So we actually farm insect protein here in Western Sydney, and we've been doing that for over 14 years now. So it's amazing that we're seeing people kind of change their mind a little bit about alternative proteins.
Awesome. And so I'm quite interested to know, so how does insect protein stack up against meat and plant-based protein?
Yeah, well, insect protein, the way that we farm it, because we're using a circular system, it's actually super, super sustainable. When we're talking about comparisons, insect protein is actually really digestible. So it's 50% more digestible than whey protein. Packed full of essential micronutrients, so things like calcium, iron, magnesium, manganese, phosphorus, and potassium and zinc in there. You've got B12s, which is something that you'd be missing out on in plant-based proteins, and it's got lots of omega-3s, and it has a complete amino acid profile. So when we're talking about alternative proteins, there is space for insect proteins, not just plant-based things, because we're missing out on a few of those little nutritional elements.
Awesome. You managed to get half of the periodic table into one sentence there, so I'm quite impressed. So what do you actually feed your mini livestock?
Yeah, so we actually work really closely with food manufacturers and farmers to take the ugly fruit and vegetables, as well as things like skins and peels and pulps from food manufacturers. It's all organic waste that we take, and we actually use that as feed. So we don't use any kind of commercial feed for our insects, and that's kind of what helps us with the sustainability aspect of what we do.
Awesome. Cool. So I'm sure there's people in the audience who've already tried your products, maybe some people who are interested, maybe some people who just cannot get their head around eating insect protein. Well, I've had your product, I think it's delicious, but why should this not be as polarizing as it might first seem?
Well, what we actually do is when you think about eating insects, it is kind of a confronting concept because you're still calling it an insect, right? And you're thinking about legs and wings and antennas and things like that. But when we eat a steak, we don't call it a cow, and it doesn't look like a cow anymore. So we've kind of taken the same kind of concept when it comes to insect proteins. So what we actually do is we create familiar food items that you would eat every day. So things like corn chips or pasta, granola, and we enrich it. So we make it better for you using invisible insect proteins. So we manufacture things like powders, oils, pastes, and even a milk kind of product that you can use in your cooking at home if you wanted to.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about traction then. So when did you launch your retail brand, which I can see behind you there? When did you launch that, and how's it going so far?
In 2019, we were lucky enough to be part of the Mars Seeds of Change program, and they've helped us with Clemengers to come up with our beautiful new retail brand called Circle Harvest. And we've just launched it in June of this year, and it's been flying off the shelves, which is fantastic. But yeah, we've had a really, really good response from consumers being able to purchase them in stores, as well as the retailers who are looking for alternative proteins.
Awesome. And so how are you, I guess, keeping up with this demand? I understand you're moving into a new production facility. Could you give us a little bit of a rundown of how that's going and what impact that's going to have on your startup as you scale up?
Yeah, so it's actually a really exciting time for us because we've been slowly kind of growing with the market over time, and now the market is really growing quite rapidly. So we're raising funds to be able to move into a new, larger facility. The move into the new facility will 10 times our production capacity, but most importantly, it'll bring down the price of production for us by 10 to 15 times. So this means that insect protein, even though it's a premium product, you won't be paying a premium price for it anymore. It'll be the same kind of price as beef or chicken, but it'll be nutritionally a superior product.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sky. So that's about all we've got time for. So remember to head into the Q&A sessions in about 25 minutes time if you want to hear more from Sky. That session is going to be facilitated by Kate. Great. So thank you, Sky. I'm going to drop you off now and get ready to bring Camille up. So following up from what we eat, we can also, another way we can have a better personal impact is where we choose to invest our personal savings. So I'm really pleased to introduce you to Camille from Bloom Impact Investing.
Hi, Adam. Hello.
Camille. Cool. So let's start by framing the problem here. Why do we need Bloom?
Sure. So today we know that the world needs to invest 4.4 trillion every year to limit global warming to 1.5 degree warming. So this is a huge issue, but at the same time, a huge opportunity. We know that clean tech outperforms the market. There is an index that I love here in Australia called the Clean Tech Index by Deloitte, and it's actually showing that clean tech companies in Australia have outperformed the ASX 200 for 6 years in a row. Yet, investing in clean tech is really hard and nearly impossible for retail investors. So Bloom is here to solve that. We want to make impact investing easy and accessible for everyone.
So that sounds like quite a big problem. What are you actually focused on?
Of course. So like I said, we are focusing on making climate impact investing easy and accessible to retail investors. And the way we do this is with a simple mobile investment app that lets you invest in a fund. This is it on the screen. That lets you invest in a diversified fund that contains the best climate impact companies worldwide, plus clean energy projects like solar farms and wind farms. You can do this starting from $500, and we keep you updated about the impact that you are making, and we offer total transparency over what you invest in.
Awesome. So I take it with a product like this, there's quite a lot of regulation and compliance involved in offering a product like this. Could you maybe just give us a little bit of an insight in how you kind of like take care of all that?
Absolutely. So financial markets and financial products are at the top of the list of the most regulated things in Australia. So we had to really work hard to get our financial license and all our regulations and compliance sorted. I'm happy to say that we now have secured our financial license. So our investors' money will be safe as any other investment product on the market. And our fund will be completely registered with ASIC, the financial markets regulator, by the 15th of January.
Awesome. So what's already out there? I take it there's some, there's other apps and things that are already out there. Kind of what makes you different to those?
It's true. There are a lot of other investing apps. Crypto is really trendy amongst young investors. But Bloom is really different in two ways. We are the first company to focus on climate finance. So this is our niche. This is what we do well, and this is how we are going to win in the market. But most importantly, we are the first app offering access to investment in clean energy projects like solar farm and wind farms.
Awesome. So let's chat a little bit about the progress that you've made in the last 6 months, because I know there's a lot to talk about here. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of kind of everything you've achieved in the last 6 months, and I guess where you're heading to next year?
It's been a very busy last 6 months, and with the help of the EnergyLab program, which has been absolutely fantastic, we've indeed achieved a lot. So I guess the highlights are we've raised our pre-seed raise over $600,000 to launch the app. We have finished the app. It's now in beta, in test mode. We have built a team to support our growth, and we have progressed our registration with finished the fund and finished the registration with all the regulators. And as to next year, we are looking to launch early February, and we will be raising again in May, towards May, July, to support our growth.
Awesome. And I actually had the privilege of beta testing your app a couple of weeks ago, and it is looking really good. So yeah, can't wait till that launches in February.
Thank you.
If people are interested in, getting on board, how should they sign up? What's the best route?
Absolutely. So look, the year is coming to an end. If you want to take a meaningful action by the end of the year and make a positive impact next year, make a pledge. Jump on our website, sign up to the waitlist, and make a pledge to invest. And as soon as we launch, you'll receive an email and you'll be able to invest with us. So that would be wonderful.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Camille. So remember to keep a note of any questions you have for Camille and jump into our breakout session in about 20 minutes time. Cool. So next up, this is a startup we've been working with for a little while. So Infravision actually took part in our scale-up program in 2020, and they joined the accelerator to focus on international expansion and their next capital raise. They've got some really exciting developments from the last year. So I'm really pleased to welcome Cameron Vanderberg from Infravision to the stage. Here he is. Hi, Cam.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having us once again. It's great to be here.
Yeah, great to have you as well. So, Cam, obviously you've been close to EnergyLab for about the past 18 months, and I know you'll also have a lot of fans in the audience, a lot of Infravision fans out there. But for anyone who's not familiar, could you give us a quick overview of what Infravision's all about?
Yes, can do, Adam. Well, in a nutshell, Infravision is building drone systems that install high voltage power line wires. Traditionally, to string high voltage power lines, a large helicopter would be used to haul the wires. And Infravision have built a connected hardware and software system to install the wires in a safer, greener, and cheaper way for the electric power industry.
Awesome. So where does the secret sauce lie? Is this in the drones themselves?
Yeah, well, I guess although we use some really big drones, as you can probably appreciate, drones are still a lot weaker than a big helicopter. They simply can't lift as much weight. In fact, even our biggest drones lift around an order of magnitude less than a standard helicopter. So we needed to engineer around that challenge and create a very high-speed automated drone system to make this application work. And that meant focusing on automation, leveraging software for both the drones and the ground control systems. And so the secret sauce, as you put it, it's all about the TX system, which is the name for our core product. Yes, which you're bringing up on the screen there.
Got a picture of it here for everyone, just so you can wrap your head around what this whole system looks like. Yeah, great looking trailer as well. So it might not be immediately obvious to people, but in terms of the energy transition, why do we actually need more power lines?
Yes, well, I think we all understand how important it is to decarbonize our energy sector. But what's often overlooked is that in order to reach those global clean energy targets that we talk about so often, we do need to build this staggering quantity of new power lines to support all of the renewable energy flooding the grid, all of the electricity coming from those new solar and wind farms. And as we transition away from fossil fuels, we're going to convert to electric vehicles, and we're going to bring them into our lives. We're actually going to need a lot more electricity to charge these vehicles. And to move the electricity, we're going to need a lot more power lines, and we're going to need them pretty fast as well. So one estimate puts the quantity that we require at an additional 16 million kilometers of power lines globally by 2030 to meet the targets that we talk about. And in line with that, grids investment in the grid needs to triple by 2030. So I guess really what I'm saying is now is the time that we need to start putting rubber on the road around our zero carbon grid. Start planning that zero carbon grid of the future, and that's all about increasing the penetration of renewables and reducing emissions on our grid globally. That's what it's all about.
Great, awesome. That makes a lot of sense. But I understand building new power lines, and that's not the whole story, is it? What about upgrading existing infrastructure?
Yes, well, as an industry, we really need to focus on making the most of our existing electric infrastructure as well. It's much faster to increase the capacity of our existing power lines in the world than it is to build brand new power lines all over the planet. And I guess at Infravision, we're working on some really exciting new features for our products. And Infravision is focused on making a contribution to solving that really big problem, which is a global problem as well.
Yeah. Cool. So I'd like to touch on your business model a little bit as well. So as you've scaled up, how have you adapted to meet your customers' needs in the way that you can actually deliver this technology? Because I think this is really interesting.
Yes, well, business model has been a big change for us, particularly in 2021, where Infravision really transitioned from stringing power lines ourselves. We basically would go out there in the field, and our teams would actually install those wires and learn everything about what was needed from an automated drone system to make that process a reality. And in 2021, we transitioned from that contractor style model to a model where we put our product into our customers' hands. So we actually provide the TX system globally now to electric utilities and contractors all around the world, so that they can upskill their existing workforce and go out there and install power lines using their existing workforce using an automated drone system. So it's very exciting for us, and it's been a big leap. The technology certainly had to take a big leap to make that a reality.
Yeah, sounds so good. So you mentioned actually going global there, which leads me on to our final question, which I understand you're expanding to the US at the moment. What stood out about that market, and how's it been going over there?
Yeah, well, it's been really exciting for us. It's a really small industry when we're talking about electric power. And what was great is that Infravision received a lot of interest from customers working in the North American markets, in the US and in Canada. I'm actually joining the call from Canada at the moment. And really what's happened is in line with the macro factors leading towards a zero carbon future, and investments in the grid globally really starting to increase. We've seen a huge appetite for new work methods and new ways of installing power lines, and also upgrading existing infrastructure. So what Infravision has been doing is we've been expanding the business in line with the feedback we're getting from our customers, and we're working really hard to build products that our customers love and they continue to tell their peers in the industry about.
Awesome. Thanks, Cam. Well, that's about all we've got time for today from Cameron. So Cam, I'll let you go. Remember, if you've got any questions for Cam, then jump into his breakout session along with Ian, who we're going to hear from next, and put your questions to Cam there. So I'm now going to bring up Ian. So next up, we have to start with a really interesting business model. So over the years, with modern agricultural practices, we've released huge amounts of carbon into the atmosphere. So with regenerative agriculture, we can actually replenish some of those stores of carbon, and also the other benefits like the improved water retention and even producing more nutritious food. So we're joined by Ian Jones, Chair of Carbon Asset Solutions, to tell us a little bit more about his startup. Hi, Ian.
Hi, Adam. How are you? Pardon me.
No worries. Great, thank you. So, Ian, could you give us a quick overview of Carbon Asset Solutions before we dive into a few more questions?
Yeah, sure. Carbon Asset Solutions, or CAS as we call it, we're focused on atmospheric carbon removal. What we've done is we've developed a precision soil carbon measurement platform, which for the first time unlocks the potential of soil carbon sequestration as a real and viable climate solution. So effectively what we do is we connect the agricultural markets with global capital markets. Now, this allows farmers to transition to sustainable farming practices, which removes atmospheric carbon on a really massive scale. In turn, that generates carbon credits, which we can sell to the capital markets, and that allows corporations to transition to net zero. So we operate on both sides of the transaction platform.
Awesome. So it sounds like quite a complex system, but how do you actually create value for farmers?
Okay, so yeah, it's underneath the bonnet. It's pretty complex. Outside, it's very simple. Effectively, our business operates in two markets: supply side, which is farmers and landholders, and the buy side, which are corporations, banks, and carbon credit exchanges. So for farmers, what we do is we deliver low cost, minimize their risk, very high precision measurement, which means they get a better financial return a lot faster. So it's the only soil-based carbon measurement and verification solution that does this anywhere in the world. So on the buy side, what we do when we work with the corporations, they're all facing the challenge of net zero. And we provide them with reliable and trusted supply of carbon credits to help plan their net zero strategies, which is what they're asking for.
Awesome. So we hear a lot about emissions reduction, but why is this on its own not enough?
Yeah, it's the global dialogue started to change probably about 2 or 3 years ago, where there was a realization that no matter how much we did about reducing carbon emissions, there was still going to be far too much left in the atmosphere. And so the focus started to be on, okay, how do we start to remove the excess atmospheric carbon dioxide and bank it away where it's not doing any harm? Now, the obvious way of doing that is trees. Everybody's familiar with that. But soil carbon sequestration was found by a United Nations body to be the most cost-effective, fastest and highest volume way to do that, which is why we focused on that. So we allow corporations to reduce their emissions and then eliminate the last part of the pathway to become true net zero.
Great stuff. So the technology itself, what does it actually look like?
Okay, so there's a number of components to the technology. Essentially, there's 3 pieces because we're a measurement, recording, and verification pathway. That's the measurement bit. So it's a scanning vehicle. What that does is it is dragged around the paddock. It's about the size of a very small trailer. It's about 2.5 meters long and meter wide. It goes around the paddock in a set pattern, and that measures the carbon in the soil at a molecular level with a degree of precision many orders of magnitude better than any other method. It also does it instantly and at a fraction of the cost. We upload that directly into a secure ledger, and we're working with Microsoft on that. And then we've built a digital verification audit pathway that complies with ISO standards across the top. So we're a fully integrated measurement technology, but it starts with that little thing.
Yeah, another trailer straight after Cam's trailer.
Yep.
So, what's the most useful way for people in your audience to support your mission going forward?
Okay, we're really wanting to start to have dialogues with both sides of the market. So we're interested in hearing from farmers, agribusiness operators, large landholders, asset managers, as to how they can be part of the carbon sequestration process and generate revenues through carbon credits. On the buy side, we're in dialogue with a number of global corporations and banks at the moment on developing carbon credit buying mechanisms, and we'd be interested in talking to companies about that as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Ian. Well, that's just about out of time. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I'm now going to prepare to bring up Ben from Hygrid Energy. So thank you again, Ian. Cool. So battery storage essentially enables a high penetration of renewables to be integrated into the energy grid. How we actually look after those various assets is becoming increasingly important. So now I'd like to introduce Ben from Hygrid Energy to tell us a little bit more about that. Hi, Ben.
G'day, Adam. Great to be here.
Good to see you. So let's jump straight in, Ben. Could you give us a quick overview of Hygrid Energy?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Hygrid Energy provides asset management technology for clean energy assets. Fundamentally, we enable our customers to achieve a better return on investment for renewable assets that they own, finance, or operate, or all three. And this is clearly an exciting space to be in. The renewable energy is what, $700 billion US per annum globally now, and it's growing at what, 9% year on year, and will only accelerate as we head towards 2030. And a really big increasing part of that is the operations and maintenance and service part of that. And we are building the technology to underpin that multi-billion-dollar service industry. So, you know, our ambition, we're pretty early stage, but our ambition is to be the asset management partner to developers, owners, and operators of clean energy assets globally.
Awesome stuff. So let's start with your team. So I think this is quite important. So you're industry veterans. Why have you actually started this company?
Yeah, good question. We're startup novices, but we are industry veterans. That's a good word, Adam. My two co-founders and I started this business to solve challenges that we've experienced firsthand. Because we've been in this industry for a long time, you know, we've learned some things the hard way. For a period of time, the three of us actually all worked together in the same company. We were commercializing an Australian energy storage technology internationally. It was great fun, great to take Australian technology internationally. And we deployed and operated systems, diverse range of systems, frequency regulation batteries, long before Tesla's big battery in South Australia, microgrid batteries, including a microgrid for a military base in the US, standalone power systems in the Australian outback, which is a pretty harsh environment, right? Rural electrification projects in India, telecommunications projects in South Africa. So we've got really substantial experience in managing diverse systems in very real world conditions. And we realize that there's a big requirement to automate and improve system operations over the full life of assets, including to account for things like degradation, but also other sources of underperformance, so that what's on the business case that gets the projects up is actually delivered with a high degree of trust over the life of the system.
Awesome. So you've identified a niche in the market, but what actually sets you apart, would you say?
Right. Well, the business case part is key to that. Obviously, asset management is not very interesting to residential customers who are buying solar and batteries for home use. That purchase decision is rarely driven by a business case. Plus, there's also obviously a plethora of monitoring systems competing in that market. So that's not where we want to play. At the opposite end of the market, the really big end of the market, where you've got really huge systems and a great example of this is the Tesla 100 megawatt hour scale batteries. They're fully integrated end-to-end solutions, and they're supported by lifelong service contracts, which you'd expect because the assets are so expensive and so valuable. But in between that, those two ends of the spectrum, there's a massive opportunity to achieve the same kind of lifetime performance that you'd expect for the really big expensive assets, at very predictable cost, so that you can maximize your return on investment. But we've also had, so that's where we started. That's the niche we're focusing on. But we've also had feedback that even the big vendor solutions are limited in the sense that they're tied to the vendor and they're specific to the asset class that vendor provides. So our platform is a proposition that brings all of that asset performance management for utility, industrial, and commercial customers at the same time as being vendor independent and common across asset classes. We're working with solar, We're talking about putting wind onto the platform for a customer. We do battery storage. We've just signed an MOU for hydrogen, green hydrogen projects, and we're looking at bringing EV charging infrastructure on as well.
Awesome. Just to finally finish off, could you give us a bit of an example of a current project you're working on?
Yeah, let me give you two, because they kind of come from different perspectives. One customer is a clean energy asset fund manager. So they're a financier of assets. And they need to report on their assets, firstly, to the fund investors about the performance of the fund. So it's a very financial set of metrics, but they also need to report to their customers who are buying the power from those assets about the utilization and uptime and other service and operational benchmarks. And our platform provides the single source of truth that automates that process, increases the accuracy, and does it at a fraction of the cost of them having a team of people doing all that manually. The other example is a renewable systems integrator who builds renewable systems for agricultural customers. And the first project we're doing with that customer is a grain processing facility transitioning to renewable energy. And that the systems integrator is giving a performance warranty and a service contract on that, which in an increasingly competitive market is a differentiator for them. But then they need to manage and track performance at the system level to meet their performance warranty commitments, and they also need to minimise their operational and service costs under the service contract. So our technology delivers all of that as well.
Awesome. Thanks for all that insight, Ben. I think that's all we've got time for today. So I'm going to let you go and get ready to bring Jane up, who is our final founder. Thanks, Ben. Great. So as we've mentioned, so storage is a key part of the energy transition and enables us to use energy at a different time to when it's generated. But it's not just large scale storage that's going to help us get there. We also have residential energy storage and the electrification of the energy consumed at home. So I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Jane Melia, last but not least, our final founder, who joins us from California for the event today. Hi, Jane.
Hi, Adam. Good to see you again.
You too. So let's start with the big picture here. So what sort of percentages of greenhouse gas emissions are we talking about with buildings?
So buildings represent a huge amount of emissions, about 35% overall, which we don't tend to think about it. We think about transportation and electricity generation. Buildings themselves consume or are responsible for huge emissions. It's about 50% commercial and residential. And most of that residential space is really due to your heating and your hot water. So that is a huge challenge. But in a way, it's kind of nice that it's focused on those two drivers, heating and hot water, because that is the opportunity to address that. By addressing those, we can have a significant impact. So that's what Harvest is focused on.
Awesome. But what's the challenge here in terms of getting rid of gas, but also in terms of integrating with the grid?
Oh, there are quite a few challenges. First of all, I just want to highlight that buildings are interesting in that they are very distributed, they live a long time, and therefore you have the challenge of trying to find solutions that you could deploy in many, many places, and also a solution that, every time somebody's gas furnace or electric resistance heating goes down today, they're going to replace it by a system that's going to still be in the field for 20, 30 years. So there is an urgency to start replacing these systems as soon as possible. But of course, there's the other topic, which I think Cam brought up as well, which is if we transition away from burning gas in our homes and start using electric systems instead, we're adding electric load to the grid. And the challenge, of course, with heating is you tend to use it in the morning, in the night, in the evening when it's cold, and that's when we don't have much solar electricity on the grid. So it's adding to the peak load, adding to the cost, and making it harder for the grid to add renewables to it.
Awesome. Great. So I won't go into detail on what a heat pump is today, but if you're a fan of how humans have hacked the laws of physics over the years, then heat pumps should be on your reading list. They're essentially 3 to 5 times more efficient than generating heat by resistance or burning gas. Essentially, it enables you to move heat from a cooler area to a warmer area, which Jane's going to talk a little bit more in detail about for us now. So we're a fan of heat pumps, aren't we, Jane? But what's the problem with conventional heat pumps?
Yep. So I emphasize, yeah, we're absolutely fans of heat pumps as well. And I'd say moving, if you use 1 unit of energy to get 3 or 4 or 5 units of energy of heat into your home, that is a wonderful thing. So they're extraordinary. But as we were talking about earlier, they tend to need to operate at the same time. They operate instantaneously to heat your home. So they're drawing on the grid at the times when there's not much solar. That actually makes it harder for the grid to add in renewables. So, although it's cleaning up your home, it's actually making it harder for the grid to get clean. And so that's really what Harvest Thermal has been focused on, is how can we leverage this wonderful heat pump technology, combine it with storage technology, thermal storage in particular, and figure out how can we get the best of both worlds, use the heat pump when there's a lot of solar available on the grid in the middle of the day, store that up, but deliver it to all those all the homeowners whenever they need it, mornings, evenings, whenever they want it.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm going to bring up a little schematic here that maybe you can talk us through. So what actually is your product? Where does it sit amongst this kind of whole system in a home?
Okay, so as a true founder, I've put us right in the middle there. So we're that little box there, which is a smart controller. It's about the size of a large shoebox. It fits into a tank closet. It fits in the wall of your garage or your mechanical room. And that's the brains of the system. It operates all the other devices. So we take a heat pump. We operate it when electricity, you can see that's the device on the left. We use it when electricity is clean, cheap, and abundant, and that generates hot water at high temperatures, and we store it in the tank. And then you can forget about the heat pump. You just run it when electricity is clean and cheap. And then the tank is operated as a thermal battery. We have a significant amount of controls and IP around how you operate it in that way to make sure that we'll always stay ahead, you never run out, and we optimize its performance. And then that can deliver your domestic hot water. You can deliver your heating. Here it's shown with forced air, but we also do radiant floor. And we also actually have our first system in place with cooling as well, which is one of the new innovations of the last few months. So I think what's nice about this is, first of all, you're completely decoupling heat pump use from heat delivery to the home. So you can have that complete freedom to choose electricity when it's best. And also, we're just using one heat pump and a tank to deliver services that you typically need 2 heat pumps, a tank, and a lithium-ion battery to deliver. So that really means affordability, scalability, and equity. And that's what we need to be able to crack the climate change problem.
Awesome. Great explanation, Jane. So finally, just to finish off with, let's talk a little bit about your go-to-market. So you've got homeowners. Do they come to you directly? How does this all work?
So we work through 2 channels. So one is for new home builders, and we work directly with the new home builders. They have scale. They're also on the front lines of regulations which are around the world beginning to ban gas or put incentives in place for electric heat pumps, and they're really eager to find good solutions. So we work with them. And for the homeowners, yes, to get devices in the home, we're a small company. The best vector for us is really working with those contractors. So we have an approved installer program that's really rolling. We've now got about 40 contractors trained and ready to go with our first units breaking ground, first commercial units breaking ground on January 4th. Great
stuff. Thank you, Jane. Well, that's about all we've got time for today. So thanks for joining and give us an explanation of Harvest Thermal. We're going to, in a moment, move over to the breakout rooms. Thanks, Jane. Cool. So now you've met all 6 founders who've taken part in this year's Climate Solutions Accelerator. So the program's now come to a close, which means that we're now on the hunt for our 2022 cohort. So applications for that program will open up in February, but we are already taking expressions of interest for that cohort next year. So we just have a very short form on our website where you can just type in a few details, and then we can open up a dialogue with the startup. The sooner they're on our radar, the better. So if you're in the audience and you've got a startup yourself, or if you know someone who might be interested in taking part in the program next year, then send them our way. Cool. So we're going to move over to the 3 breakout rooms now. So we've got Sky, Blackburn, and Jane Melia. Sorry, Sky and Camille. So Sky from Circle Harvest and Camille from Bloom are going to be together in one breakout room. We've got Cam from Infravision and Ian from Carbon Asset Solutions are going to be in another breakout room. And then Ben Shepherd, who you heard from just before Jane, and then of course Jane herself are going to be in the 3rd breakout room. So head into those sessions now, have your questions at the ready, and we'll kick those off right away. Thank you.